Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 15, Episode 18. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us here this Monday, Steelers Nation. Dave, this past weekend was the last quiet weekend for quite some time for the Steelers and for the entire NFL, and we are now 6 days away from the start of the Steelers season, and on Thursday will be the 2024 kickoff for the entire NFL. So excited for that. Hopefully everyone enjoyed their Labor Day weekend. Happy Labor Day to all. Dave, thanks for being back here today.
Yeah, let me get this out of the way. Ayo, oye, Lola. How about that?
That's one of the two. You got to get the other one, too.
I've got the other one, I think, as well, too. Let me at least pull up the name here in just a minute. But, we'll get to that here in a minute. Mm-hmm. But should be worth the wait just to tune in to hear me pronounce some of these new names on the roster and all. But that was the news, obviously, first thing this morning, that it sounds like the Steelers are going to have a 17th player on their practice squad with an international pathway program exemption after losing Julius Welshoff. That comes from Aaron Wilson. The team has not officially announced that yet. The rest of the 16-man practice squad has been set. We'll go over here in a bit, but happy Monday to everybody, and thank you for listening.
Yeah, that was Ulola, a defensive back, international pathway program player that Pittsburgh worked out last week. Should be their exemption for the practice squad this year. So we'll mention the other practice squad names, like you said. Let's actually start right there, because Pittsburgh noted they were one of the later teams to get around to, but they've officially finished out their 16-man practice squad, and with Ulola, that appears to be the 17th man, the exemption. So we covered the 8 players who were with the team this summer that were brought back. Let's talk about the outsiders. Some of these were reported, by other outlets before being officially confirmed by the team, but I'll go through all the names just the same. So the team also signing running back Boston Scott, wide receivers Brandon Johnson, Ben Skoranek, and also Quez Watkins. So that's the last internal name that got brought back. Offensive lineman Doug Nestor, and a reunion with John LeGlue, who was a starter in Pittsburgh in 2021 at left guard for 5 games. At linebacker, Devin Harper, and the other name here, a little difficult to pronounce, Ade Takunbo Ogundije is how I have phonetically things written down. The linebacker, former draft pick. So that's also a player sign. He is not international exemption. He's been in the NFL. He's born in Michigan. So he's not qualifying for that status. So that is the practice squad, Dave. Overall, I like the outsider names, not pretending like they're going to change or save the season, but I like some of the additions.
Just so I'm not running scared here, Ade Takunbo Ogundeji.
Okay, yeah, I might phonetically. I think I don't know. I think we're both pretty close. One of us has probably got one of us.
I watched a video on it from his I think it was a Notre Dame interview. What was he with Notre Dame at one time? It was either. Yeah, he was. I went back and pulled one off of Twitter and all, where the lady started off the interview with, "Let's get the pronunciation out of the way." I found one of the. I've been gearing up for this since over the weekend there, because I figured people would get a kick out of Uncle Dave trying to pronounce some of these names. But anyway, looking at the practice squad as a whole, obviously we know the several names of the players that were with the team throughout the summer. As far as the outside additions, John LeGlue back with the team, like you stated. That's interesting. There obviously has a little bit of position flexibility, I guess. Boston Scott was a name that I think we mentioned previously. Brandon Johnson comes over from time at Denver. Guy that our own John Carney had highlighted. Or John Carney. I'm looking at it. John LeGlue. Josh Carney highlighted way back in March. At the start of free agency, kind of wondering if the Steelers might have interest in him just as a free agent, and that would be Ben Skoranek. And obviously comes off of time with the Rams, I think, and very fine special teams player. And the Rams do such a good job right now at scouting and developing wide receiver talent that they didn't have room for Skoranek on the on their 53-man roster this year. So I think that's a nice add there. When you look at the wide receivers overall that this team now has on their practice squad, and obviously Brandon Johnson and Skoranek, and I think those are the only. Oh, and
Quez Watkins.
Yeah, and Quez Watkins. You've got three guys there that actually have NFL game experience.
It almost outproduced Pittsburgh's 53-man roster, Pickens aside.
Yeah. And obviously Skoranek, a good special teams player on top of it there. So, you at least, you look at the five wide receivers on the roster. We're going to have a nice little conversation about those five and cash and all like that a little bit here later in the show there. And it doesn't, at least at this point, appear like as though the team's going to go outside and make any kind of notable add-on here. But you could do worse than these three wide receivers overall. Look, Quez Watkins doesn't offer you really much of anything other than maybe as a return guy as far as special teams goes, but he does have the speed on the outside. He had that muff, I think, on the punt return during the preseason, but I thought he at least rebounded to make some plays on the offensive side of football, and I think he had some good practices after that. You obviously don't want to get into a situation where you're having to utilize a lot of these guys, or if any, on the 53-man roster, but there's a good chance we see one or two of these guys get elevated throughout the season, at least early on, at least where the roster stands right now. So, if you want to look at now the wide receiver room from top to bottom, from the 5 on the 53 to the 3 on the practice squad, once again, at least you've got some guys that have some experience there, and you do have a nice special teams guy in Skoranek. And props to Josh Carney, because like I said, he had wrote about him early on in the offseason there.
Yeah, kudos to him. That was a good call that came back around to be true. From a practice squad, relatively speaking, it's a solid group of 3. One point to make on Skoranek is that while he's a really quality special teams guy and a multi-phase player, he has not been a gunner throughout his NFL career. Not sure exactly what he did in college, if he was or not. Wouldn't shock me if he did at Notre Dame, but he's been mainly on the punt team, a wing or a personal protector. Not saying he couldn't be a gunner, and Pittsburgh could try him there if they wanted to, but I'm just talking about what his background has been so far. It's not been in that particular position as that outside gunner, one of the first guys down on the field. So just want to make a note of that. We'll watch to see if that changes, if he was ever elevated for a game. But a really good special teamer, and then Johnson and Watkins are big play capable guys.
Yeah, good points there. I think looking at this practice squad overall, teams can have up to 6 veteran players with accrued seasons and all like that on a practice squad, and they indeed have 6, and 3 of them are the wide receivers in Quez Watkins, Skoranek, and I believe Brandon Johnson, and the other 3 would be Jonathan Ward, Boston Scott, and Anthony Everett, I believe, is the last one there. So those are the 3 veterans. Those guys will have a little slightly increased practice squad salary over the remaining, how many, 6 minus be 11 left after that. If you look at the practice squad as a whole, as far as earnings go, it looks like, assuming the Oye Lola signing goes through, is the 17th. That would put them at $4.2894 million in practice squad cost, and that obviously will hit the cap as soon as the rule of 51 goes away on Thursday, I believe.
I was happy to see them bring in the outsiders for the offensive line. I think that was necessary. I talked about throughout the summer the third team O-line, really nobody stuck out there. Joey Fisher seemed to be the best of that group, but 2 costly penalties in that preseason finale. No one else really had an impact. Anderson Hardy ended up on the Dolphins practice squad. Tyler Beach, those types of guys just didn't do anything for me. So you get Nestor, a rookie who I think Pittsburgh had some interest in as he came out of West Virginia as they studied Zach Frazier, and then bringing back Leglue, who's got NFL experience and versatility. Again, not pretending like these are going to change the course of the season, but given the injuries up front, it's nice to have some experience and some versatility on your practice squad.
Yeah, and Leglue obviously knows the culture already with the team, and I think he even posted on Twitter that he's happy to be back in Pittsburgh. So we'll see how long that lasts. Obviously, the practice squad will get comings and goings as the season goes on, and we'll have to see if this team changes anything out of the chute here. But I think odds are good that this might be the 17 at least that they start the season with here.
Right now, as you mentioned, top of the show, the 53-man roster has not changed since Tuesday's cutdowns. There's not been any additions or subtractions. You wonder if that will change. I still stare at those 8 defensive linemen and wonder if they're going to really have 8 on their roster when they take flight to Atlanta for Sunday's game. If there was going to be a change, you think it would be today. The team is practicing Monday. By the time people listen to this, they're probably already wrapped up. So if they were going to make an addition, then, if a Logan Lee was going to go to IR, if something else was going to occur, you'd think it would be today, but we'll wait and see. But right now, things unchanged on the 53.
Yeah, I'm a little bit surprised by that, especially from a historical perspective as well, too.
It was the last time Pittsburgh did not change the roster from cutdowns to week 1.
Yeah, I'll have to look at that history post that I did. I think you have to go back to, what was it, 17, where they didn't. I'm gonna have to pull that up while we're talking here. But I did, every year I write that, right. Guys after at least like mandatory mini camp or something like that, or something along those lines of how they change. Historically, how we should expect outsiders to come in, and I'm not finding a post here. I'll find it as we go along here. But I am a little bit surprised that it hasn't changed yet. But there's, as soon as we get off this show, they could maybe make a roster move here. I found it here. Let's see. Last year, Desmond King was added on 8/31. The year before that, they had those the couple of trades for Jesse Davis and Malik Reed on the 30th of August, and then they claimed Jameer Jones off waivers on 9/1. I'm not going to go through all the years here, but let's see. 2021, they had traded for Akello Witherspoon. They added a couple in 2020. I think 2019, Alex, was the last time that we didn't see any addition late, from cut down to week 1 kind of additions to this roster.
Okay. Gotcha. And then who is qualifying in your annual, the roster will be different, post mini camp breaking? Who has been added that has made this 53 that was not part of the team during, say, mini camp? Jalen Elliott, I think. Well, I don't know when Elliott was released by the team, but is he one? And are there any others?
Oh, let's roll back through this real quick. Let me pull up the roster. As far as after,
well, whenever you're cut down, I forget kind of the line in the sand that you use.
Obviously, the Marcus Golden thing did not work out. I'm trying to scroll through here real quick and see if there was any late additions here. Yeah, I'm not sure there was. Oh, yeah. Matakevich, right?
Okay, yep. Yeah, it was actually Elliott got released to bring in Matakevich on July 17th. Now, of course, Matakevich was a former Steeler, and Elliott is as well. But that still technically should count in that kind of bucket.
Yeah, I think Matakevich might be it that actually stuck.
It appears so. So A little bit of tendency breaking from Pittsburgh, a little less moving and shaking. I think overall the roster was more set in place and a little more stable than where it's been in the past couple of years, which is what you would expect from a GM as he kind of shapes the roster in his vision. The first year or two, there's a lot of turnover, which there was. And Pittsburgh had a lot of turnover in different ways in the quarterback room, the cornerback room this year. But I think from entering kind of the spring standpoint, the roster felt a little more intact than past years.
I guess we still kind of wait and see what's going to happen here with the Logan with Logan Lee. We talked about him the other day, and I'm going to get ahead of ourselves. Obviously, we like to read some emails on this, but Christopher King sent a email after our last show. Something along the lines here. He says, any chance the fact that he is the last emergency long snapper standing with Holcomb being on PUP may be the reason why he made the 53? That's one element that we have not kind of attacked on this, but here's the thing, though. With Logan Lee, yes, he did work as an emergency snapper through training camp. He's the way the roster looks right now, assuming it stays the same, you would think that Logan Lee would be inactive. But if you did have something happen, let's say that Logan Lee is on the 53 when this team travels to Atlanta, and say something happened to Christian Kuntz in pre-snap or pre-game warm-ups or something, at least you would have the ability to make as long as it happened 90 minutes before kickoff, at least you would have the ability to make Kuntz inactive and make Logan Lee and give you at least a little something there at long snapper. So it's a great point out by Chris here that if Lee does wind up on the week 1 53-man roster, at least it gives you, yes, an emergency snapper to make active for a game 90 minutes beforehand should something happen to Christian Kuntz.
I love talking backup long snappers as much as anybody, but I'm even skeptical of that because it is so narrow. Because as you said, assuming that Lee is inactive for a game, that's usually when you would have to turn to your long snapper mid-game. The odds of him getting hurt in warmups, I can't think of a single time that has ever happened. And it's even rare to happen in game, but of course it happened. We all remember James Harrison, the Giants, and the disaster that became. So it really wouldn't help you much. And if Kuntz ever got hurt and you needed him for next week, you would bring somebody in. And you wouldn't need Logan Lee. So I don't think that's the reason. It's interesting thought. I appreciate thinking outside the box on that one, but the value that would give you and the usefulness that it would be is so small. Again, as you said, would only be the positive if he got hurt in warmups. Kuntz did. I don't think that's the reason to keep a 53-man roster spot for Lee. I don't,
but it is another way to look at, I understand why he's looking at it this way is what I'm getting at. The rarity. Who was remember when they traded for Levi Brown several years?
He got hurt in warmups.
And he got hurt. He never even played a snap for the Steelers after they traded for him. But I just wanted to shout him out because it was one thing that we did not talk about there. And instead of rolling it in at the end of the show, I wanted to hit it when we were talking about it here. And look, once again, we've got several days before. And like you said, with the team resuming practicing today, either today or tomorrow, if they were going to make a change to the 53-man roster, that's when it would happen.
You do wonder, let's assume that Lee is not active for week 1, whether he's inactive or IR or something else. You do wonder who the backup snapper would be because last year it was Holcomb and he's not an option. He's on reserve pup. And if Lee's not in that equation, I have no idea who has a background at all in long snapping that, because you have to have somebody. There's always a conversation they have with somebody like, hey, you're the backup guy if something ever happens, God forbid. So I don't know who it would be if it's not those two guys.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the roster right now. Who would it be?
You'd have to go into somebody's bio, somebody who did it in high school, because Lee did it in high school. You think about Cam Sutton, not that he's an option right now, but he's an emergency holder. He held in high school, like that kind of stuff. You'd have to go deep into somebody's background on.
I don't have a clue who it would be.
Used to be Derek Watt. Obviously, he's retired. I wonder if a Herbig or someone would do it, but no idea. So hopefully, you never find out. That's the goal. But with Pittsburgh, it's known it's happened a time or two before.
All right, where to from here?
Let's give an update here on contract extensions. The two most notable names: Pat Freiermuth, Cam Hayward. Clock ticking on that. Do you think you talked a little bit about, maybe Monday would kind of be a good day. The team comes back before that first practice. What's your feeling? I know you're still confident in Freiermuth getting done and believe something happens with Hayward as well. Let me ask it this way: when would you start getting concerned that it may not happen? Like, at what point in the week would you sit there and go, maybe they're going to do something different on this one?
After they board the plane.
Okay, so basically Saturday.
Yeah. Because wasn't it years ago that they did Troy Polamalu at the airport or something like that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Pittsburgh has been known to do things very last second, but Khan has been quicker than Colbert has been.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean that negotiations can't draw out for whatever reason. So
sure.
Until that door on that plane closes on Saturday, I think you have up until then. So once that happens, and if any hadn't been announced or whatever's remaining hadn't been announced, that's when I think the finality kind of is. I would like to think that they would try to get these things wrapped up by Thursday.
Yeah, not to put the cart before the horse, because these things could easily happen well before then, but what would be the potential holdup on a Freiermuth deal? I could see the issue in Hayward and how you structure and new money versus no new money, that kind of stuff. We've talked about that before. What could be the obstacle to getting a Freiermuth deal done?
Just, trying that last minute, try and push deadline spur actions type thing. I think we're both in agreement that we would be surprised if Freiermuth, when and if Freiermuth gets done, that there will be new money. Guaranteed money past 2024. So I can't really see that being the holdup, especially his agent was even at training camp, about halfway through it or whatnot.
Mm-hmm. And we thought, okay, this thing's getting done.
Right.
Nothing happened.
Right. And nothing happened there. For all we know, they might already have this thing ready to go.
If they do, what is the holdup at this point?
It might be just a manipulation of cap space. Once again, because of how this thing is, because Thursday begins or Thursday being the end of the rule of 51, they technically have that extra cap space right now because of the rules such as the Holcomb stuff not being the decrease in his salary not happening yet. A lot of things don't happen until Thursday, so maybe they're trying to make sure to look at Cam Hayward, and look, they might still be looking at outside guys right now too. A last minute push for an outsider or two and you wouldn't think at this point that anybody that's added from the outside would hugely affect
the cap situation.
Right. Change the cap situation here. But maybe they're looking at getting Hayward done first, because assuming that you did get Hayward done, that would produce the lowering more than likely in his cap charge. So if I were to bet how these things would get reported out, it would be Hayward first and then Freiermuth.
And Hayward is the potentially trickier contract to get done, I think, compared to Freiermuth.
Yeah, just because, how much more new money is he wanting in 2024 above the $16 million, if any? And then what's the negotiation like on, let's say it's a 2-year extension? What will his salaries be? If
you had to guess, I know it's just complete guessing, but it's a Monday and things are relatively slow, so why not? What do you think Omar Khan's involvement in contracts are now that he's the GM? Obviously, he's involved. There's an element of that, but how much is him being the closer, and how much is it of like a Cole Marco handling a lot of the frontline stuff and then Khan coming in late?
I'd just like to be a fly on a wall with all that to see how that actually transpires. I would like to think that they have a structure and all this all out of the way. The Steelers on meeting and all together. But now at this point, now that all the roster decisions are done, now what's Omar left to do at this point? I would think Omar has at least a little say in some of these talks here.
Sure. I'm just curious about the process and how that's changed from him being the quote unquote cap guy to him having now the role of GM that is so much more expansive and there's so much more on his plate. What that delegation process is like. I know, for example, I think Marco basically handles all the rookie contracts himself because they're slotted and there's little, wiggle room there. There's some of the third-year money guarantee or whatever that is on those deals for second round picks, for example. But Marco basically just handles those and Khan lets him do his thing. And obviously he's more active, Khan would be in these types of extensions. I'm just curious on what the process would be. I'd love to get some information on that.
I would just like to be a fly on the wall for all of it. Just to see how that goes. I'd like to see some of the spreadsheets that they have and ranges and that kind of stuff. So that's a long answer saying I really don't know how it goes.
Right. It's not something that's talked about much, and I know we're just kind of speculating, but that's one, I think, under-discussed part about how that process works, how the sausage gets made. All right, Dave, let's talk about an article you wrote this weekend about, we mentioned this, I think, on Friday's show, and as we often do, kind of our ideas during the show help spur articles. You talked about, what is the cheapest wide receiver room in football? Intuitively, based on what Pittsburgh's receivers are from a cash standpoint, it would seem like Pittsburgh is the cheapest room, but you found out they are not the cheapest room. There is one that is a little cheaper than Pittsburgh. So talk about that study and your takeaways from it.
Yeah, just from a cash perspective, and keep in mind when we're talking about cash, we're talking about the base salary that a player is scheduled to earn in 2024, and if a player received a signing bonus this offseason, that would also count toward it as well, too. When you look at the Steelers' 5 wide receivers on their 53-man roster right now, obviously that list includes George Pickens, Van Jefferson, Roman Wilson, Scotty Miller, Calvin Austin III. Roman Wilson, of those 5, Roman Wilson will receive the largest cash payment of the 5 because he obviously got a rookie base salary plus a signing bonus. He's scheduled to earn $1.793304 in total cash. Right behind him is George Pickens at 1.31, almost 1.319 million, and then Van Jefferson, Scotty Miller both signed veteran benefit contracts at 1.2925 million. Long story short, their 5 receivers total out to 6.682140. So not even 7 million for those 5. When you look at the Packers initial 53-man roster right now, they have actually 6 wide receivers, and the total cash for those 6 is even cheaper than the Steelers at 6.35, almost 6.3515 million in totality there. So they've got a very cheap wide receiver room in cash, cheaper than the Steelers, and they even have one more. Those 6 are Christian Watson, Jaden Reed, Romeo Doubs, Dontavian Wicks, Malik Heath, and Bo Melton. So that would, according to my research, be the cheapest wide receiver room in the NFL. Which wide receiver room would you rather have right now?
Read back one more time the Packers names. I'm leaning Green Bay, but read them back one more time.
Christian please. Watson, Jaden Reed, Romeo Doubs, Dontavian Wicks, Malik Heath, and Bo Melton.
Yeah, it's tough, and Green Bay's benefiting from a better quarterback situation, at least based off of last year and Jordan Love's play. Pickens gives you an advantage. He's the best receiver, I think, of all the 2 combined, but is the strength of the overall kind of depth better for Green Bay than what Pittsburgh has? That's really tough. I'll lean Green Bay, but you could twist my arm into Pittsburgh, I think, as well.
Yeah, obviously, Steelers bolstered, as you said, by George Pickens there. But Yeah, that's the cheapest wide receiver room. The Steelers second, and let's see if I have it pulled up still. I can tell you as far as cash goes, or I don't know if this has been updated since. New Orleans, I think, is in third place at 10.06 million with their wide receiver room. New England, fourth from the bottom at 13.42 million, the most expensive room in the NFL wide receiver room now. I don't probably not hard to guess, right?
Is it San Francisco?
Yes, sir, it would be.
There you go. Ayuk and Jennings and Debo.
And behind them, it looks like are the Bears. And by the way, San Francisco, 64.46 million.
Yeah, you contract will move that needle. That is for sure.
And you got Debo and
Jennings.
Yeah.
Pearsall, first round pick.
Chicago's second at 63.75 because didn't they do something with Moore's contract this off season?
Dunze, top 10 pick.
Right. Houston, third at 60.19 million in cash for their wide receiver room for 2024, and then Dallas after the CeeDee Lamb deal, fourth overall. So what a range. I mean, the Steelers at 6.68 million, and then the 49ers at the top at 64.46 million. Now, the guy from Texans Cap, who I've got a lot of respect for, has written some previous articles, and he's written about how much does cash spending annually really equate. His takeaway of his whole post was that cash spending does not equal championships. Okay.
Sure, and that makes sense to some degree, but go ahead.
I just want to get that out of the way. And as part of going down the rabbit hole of this, I felt like I wanted to add something else to the post overall to make it more interesting, because overall you would read this and you'd say, oh man, what a negative, a bunch of Debbie Downers that Steelers Depot is here when it comes to talking about this wide receiver room. I wrote in here, and I did the research before everyone gets too bent out of shape reading this post. I want to remind everyone about the 7 wide receivers that the Kansas City Chiefs, you know about the Kansas City Chiefs last year, right, Alex?
Pretty good year for them, yeah.
Yeah. They did okay last season. I think they won the Super Bowl. The 7 wide receivers the Kansas City Chiefs had on their active 53-man roster for week 1 last season. I'm going to read off these names for you. Sit down. Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Sky Moore, Kadarius Toney, Rashee Rice, Justin Ross, Richie J. The always you can try to contain him, but you can't stop him. Richie James and Justin Watson. Those were the 7 wide receivers on their week 1 53-man roster to start the 2023 season. When you look at that 7, when I naming them off, what do you think about those 7?
It's a lot of Pittsburgh flair with Justin Watson and Sky Moore being some Pittsburgh suburb kids, but yeah, not exactly the most daunting receiver room. Of course, as you noted in the post, it helped who was throwing them the football, made that receiver room look a little bit better than what it probably would have been in say, Pittsburgh.
Yeah, some guy named Patrick Mahomes, but a lot of people probably heard about him. That definitely helps. But while that group of 7 does not look like Murderer's Row on paper, their total, I don't know exactly where they ranked last year in total cash for that room. I ran out of time to try to dig that info out, but I can guarantee you it was near the bottom of the NFL, if not the bottom of the NFL in totality there. So, the main takeaway there is obviously the quarterback position, right? With Patrick Mahomes. And long story short, when talking about all this, whether it be the Steelers wide receiver room, the Packers wide receiver room, the Chiefs wide receiver room last year, when you circle it back to Pittsburgh, it goes without saying how the Steelers are able to run the football in 2024 is going to be paramount in the offense success. Obviously, how they utilize those backs out of the backfield in the passing game, how they utilize Pat Freiermuth. But the quarterback play, no secret, quarterback play is going to be paramount for the Steelers this year. So can the Steelers win games on offense, or more importantly, can this offense score points in 2024 with this wide receiver room? And really it gets a little bit extended because of the 3 practice squad guys. You kind of wonder at some point how many, if any, will have to see the field because of whatever reasons here. But the overarching takeaway here is quarterback play is going to be paramount if they're going to succeed over a full year with this wide receiver group.
No, I agree 100%. And I think the other element, which is pretty obvious, but I still wrote about it for this morning, is, without a needle mover addition at wide receiver, the impact of Arthur Smith becomes more magnified. How does he align and free up George Pickens, knowing that every defensive game plan will be involving and centering around how do we slow down and limit and take away George Pickens? And so what does that chess match look like for Smith and the Steelers to stay one step ahead, stacks and bunches and getting Pickens in the slot? The good news is Pickens is more comfortable than ever before, and he can play more, can have more alignments, and he's not just a vertical go deep guy that he was his rookie season. But that's going to be critical. And then beyond that, how do you scheme up the other receivers? It's less about having them just win because of their talent, which is not going to be the way to get it done there, but creating good concepts and good schemes to work guys open. That's going to be critical. So I think Smith becomes a really true figurehead in making this whole passing game go.
Yeah, and if you roll back to his time in Tennessee, what was the biggest year for them? Was it 19 or 20?
In terms of the passing game?
Or, when did they have their most success as a team with Arthur Smith? It was either 19 or 20, wasn't it?
2020 was the more successful from a point standpoint. Both years were good, but 2020 was 4th highest scoring offense.
All right, their top 5 receivers in 2020 with the Titans that year, where you had A.J. Brown catch, believe it or not, he was their leading receiver with 70 catches, just over 1,000 yards, almost 1,100 yards, 1,075. He had 11 touchdown receptions that year. Second, Corey Davis, 65 for 984 yards, 5 touchdowns. Smith, who was the J. Smith?
Jonnu.
Oh, that was Jonnu. Okay, he was a tight end. Fersker, he was a tight end also, wasn't he?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Their 3rd leading receiver, true wide receiver that year, was Humphreys, with 23 catches for 228 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Which would be a stat line I would kind of expect from whoever becomes the 3rd leading true wide receiver in Pittsburgh this year, be it Roman Wilson or Calvin Austin or Scotty Miller, who's kind of got a Humphreys game to him. That would seem like a stat line that you would expect.
And then one last call back to the Kansas City Chiefs last year. They had one wide receiver last year, the Chiefs did, that caught more than 27 passes, and that was Rashee Rice with 79.
Yeah, obviously they have Travis Kelce, and so his impact was, him and Rice were the focal points of the passing game. Who finished 3rd in receptions for the Chiefs last year? Was it a running back or something?
Pacheco with 44.
Okay. Yeah, so I was wondering who that 3rd guy would have been. Another tight end, they had Noah Gray with 28 receptions. So, right. Yeah, obviously with the volume that Kelce and Rice had, they both had over 100 targets. I don't think Pittsburgh will have 2 guys though with over 100 targets, regardless of position this year.
Will the Steelers have a wide receiver not named George Pickens catch more than 27 passes?
Yeah, I think Van Jefferson will catch more than 27 this year.
Okay. Anybody else catch more than 27 wide receiver than those 2?
That's where it gets borderline. I think with some of the rotations, you probably might not have a consistent number 3. Roman Wilson will integrate himself throughout the year. I would bank on not having another receiver catch more than 27.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. This is just a long way of going back to what we said and really have stated since, Arthur Smith came on board and we started to see how this roster was likely to be built and how the schematically with the, usage of 2 and 3 tight ends. You're right. It's going to have to, Arthur Smith's going to play a big role along with the quarterback position in if whether or not this offense is going to have success and score more points, as Matt Canada would say.
Yeah, so that is going to be the goal. I think, again, it's magnified all the more now that you're not going to get Ayuk, and presumably no other top flight receiver is going to come in and start for this team, and maybe no other receivers coming in really at all. So just had the article up this morning. Again, pretty intuitive thought we all understand, but we just wanted to kind of lay that out in detail to define what is a successful year for Arthur Smith.
All right. Where to from here?
Just kind of a quick, fun, lighthearted note, but an important one. TJ Watt and his wife announcing the first baby Watt is on the way. They posted photos of their pregnancy this weekend, and so that was a cool thing to see and happy for them. And TJ Watt going to be a dad here soon.
All right. So let's see, 22 years from now, I'm 56 now. 78, I guess I would be, is when the Steelers will draft this. We obviously don't know if it's a boy or girl or anything like that, but yeah, good on them. Excited for them to start their family. And obviously JJ's got a new baby boy, and Derek's got, how many does Derek have? 2 or 3?
I'm not too sure, to be honest with you.
All right. So, good on them. Exciting time for them.
And I assume Mike Tomlin will be still the head coach in 22 years from now, drafting, dusting off that old TJ Watt scouting report.
Yeah, I don't think I'll be doing this podcast with you at that point, though. I don't know.
We'll see. All right. Let's do an article, something I wrote this morning. Just talk about this briefly. It doesn't mean much, but I'm always kind of about quirky stats and trends and streaks, and those were kind of my cup of tea. Wrote this morning that it's not often the Pittsburgh. I mean, I think always week 1 is a challenge for every team because you're facing a clean slate. And so how do you scout a team that's coming in with probably new personnel and sometimes new pieces on the coaching staff? And do you look at the preseason? Do you look at last year's tape? Do you just kind of focus on yourself and what you do well? I think it's even harder for a team like Pittsburgh when they're facing a new coaching staff in Atlanta with Raheem Morris and new OC, new DC, that kind of stuff. It's really a clean slate, and it's even harder, I think, to evaluate Pittsburgh. It's harder to evaluate Atlanta if you're Pittsburgh than it is for Atlanta to evaluate the Steelers because they know Mike Tomlin and it's the same DC and it's a new OC, but they can go off Arthur Smith tape last year because he was running the offense in Atlanta. And so I did some research on how often it is that Pittsburgh plays new coaching staffs to begin a season. And it's not that often. It's only happened twice under Mike Tomlin, in 2020 with Joe Judge and the Giants, in 2014 with the Browns. I think that was, who was that coach back then? Let me see if I have it noted here. Mike Pettin was the coach in the Browns back then. They've had so many head coaches. So those were the last 2 instances in the Tomlin era. Both were victories. The last time Pittsburgh lost an opener, a week 1 game against a new coaching staff, got to go all the way back to 1994 and the Dallas Cowboys with Barry Switzer when he got hired. And they lost that game 26-9. Emmitt Smith running all over the Steelers that day. So, will Pittsburgh be able to keep this 30-year streak going, or will it get snapped? It's going to be, I think, an additional challenge when you're facing even more of the unknown in this coaching staff. And I know that Tomlin and Morris know each other well. They coach together, but still, there's going to be an unknown to how does Zach Robinson run his offense and how does Atlanta's defense present itself, those kinds of things.
Yeah, here's the thing about at least preparing for the Atlanta offense for this upcoming game. Arthur Smith obviously can provide, and the tape as well too, can provide a lot of intel on a lot of these guys. How much of their offensive line has actually changed? They got Matthews at left tackle, Bergeron, who was a rookie last year at left guard, Drew Dahlman. Dahlman was with them last year, right?
Yeah, he came out with the Kendrick Green class, I believe.
Chris Lindstrom, it sounds like he was with him, and Caleb McCary, right? And then obviously
first rounders.
their offensive weapons in Kyle Pitts and B. John Robinson and Drake London. Darnell Mooney, he comes over from Chicago, right?
Yep, Chicago.
And then obviously Steelers know a little bit about Ray McLeod, who comes over as kind of their slot guy there. And then you have a lot of tape on Kirk Cousins. So, as a whole, you kind of wonder what they're going to do schematically with the new OC and Raheem Morris, obviously, as the head coach and all. But there obviously will be changes and all, but at least as a whole, about that group, at least from a personnel standpoint.
Yeah, the people, although the people know Arthur Smith as well. So you can bet, I'm sure, Raheem Morris and Zach Robinson, that coaching staff, is kind of picking their brains a bit about how Smith ran his offense and what some of his calls. And you want to make sure, if you're Pittsburgh, do you carry the same verbiage? Because that Falcons defense, the guys that are carried over from last year, if you run the same calls and checks the line, the defense might know that kind of stuff because they heard it the last 3 years. So you got to be, I think Pittsburgh has to be careful of that. These are small things, but small things can matter in tight games that Pittsburgh habitually plays. They're always playing close games.
Yeah, and then when you look at the defensive side of the ball for the Falcons, we've already talked about, the late offseason additions in Matthew Judon and Justin Simmons, and they've already had Jesse Bates there. They got a beast up front in Grady Jarrett and all. So, yeah, those guys, they know a lot about Arthur Smith, that's for sure.
And Pittsburgh never got to officially interview Zach Robinson, correct? They requested the interview. That never actually took place. Am I wrong in thinking that?
That sounds right. I have to roll back and look what we wrote about it, but that sounds right.
So you would have loved to at least been able to interview him to have kind of a little bit of intel on his philosophy and mindset now that he's the OC in Atlanta.
I guess your big takeaway here, it's going to be easier for the Falcons to prepare for the Steelers than it is for the Steelers to prepare for the Falcons.
Yeah, you summed that up well. That's the one sentence takeaway. And does that mean that Pittsburgh is destined to lose? No. They've won their last 4 games against new coaching staffs to begin seasons. It's easier if it's week 8 and you're facing a new coaching staff because you just watched their tape about the last couple weeks, and there's a story to be told about that. So just one element to consider, and what I've been talking about for a long time, is going to be a pretty tough game for Pittsburgh.
At least it should have the feel of a home crowd, though, right?
Yeah, you had that clip you posted the other day of the last time Pittsburgh was in Atlanta, 2 years ago, and it basically felt like a home game.
Yeah, I would imagine Steeler Nation shows up strong again.
Me too. All right, Dave, last thing I want to do today, play a little game here, just kind of, killing some time. And I wanted to get your impression about where Russell Wilson ranks as among the top quarterbacks in football right now. If you had to take a guess just before we get into kind of the line by line aspect of it, where just gut instinct, where do you think you would rank Russell Wilson among the starting 32 right now? Like, what's the first number that comes to mind for you?
22 comes to mind.
Okay, for me, it was like 20. I have no idea if it's going to be that as we kind of go through the exercise, but so you're 22 just off the top, and I'm at 20. All right, let's go through. I should have had this. I was going to package kind of the best quarterbacks in football to kind of get them out of the way, but I forgot to do that. So I'm going to just go through things, line by line here. Let's start with the AFC East and just tell me, Dave, if you think these guys are better than Russell Wilson or not. We'll start with Josh Allen of the Buffalo Bills.
Oh yeah, definitely.
All right, I'm gonna write this down too here, so I have some marks here. But I think everyone would agree that Allen is better. What about Tua in Miami?
Yeah, look, yeah, I know there's a lot of consternation probably in Miami, but especially with the offense that they run and all like that, and his mobility and his strong arm and all like that, I would put Tua ahead of Russell Wilson.
The last team to announce a starting quarterback was not Pittsburgh. It was the Patriots. They announced Jacoby Brissett. I know we could debate Drake May, but Brissett is the official starter. So is Russell Wilson better than Jacoby Brissett?
I'd like to think so, yes.
Me too. I know I talked about Brissett a couple years ago in the Trubisky year, but I think Wilson is better than Brissett, and I think Brissett will not be starting too long in New England. What about Aaron Rodgers, 40-year-old off torn Achilles Aaron Rodgers?
Look, he's obviously not mobile these days and coming off the injury and all like that, but he's still Aaron Rodgers from a mental standpoint and all. I would still put Aaron Rodgers ahead of Russell Wilson.
Ditto. AFC North, let's just name the three AFC North other quarterbacks: Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, and Deshaun Watson. Are they all better than Russell Wilson?
Jackson and Burrow, most definitely. I wonder about Deshaun Watson's health, if he'll ever, I think we both agree that Deshaun Watson from the Texans, he's not ever going to be Deshaun Watson of the Texans anymore. Mm-hmm. I do wonder about kind of that just his health moving forward and all. And all that said, I would still slightly rank Watson ahead of Russell Wilson, I think.
Same here by nose. And so we're in lockstep so far. AFC South, CJ Stroud. Is he better than Russell Wilson?
Man, just going off that tape from his rookie season and thinking how he's going to progress and his offensive coordinator and the weapons that he has, I'm going to say yes.
Okay, me as well. Anthony Richardson, Pittsburgh will see him in week 4. Interesting one to discuss here, I think.
I would put Russell Wilson just ahead of him. He's got more experience. Richardson's more, I worry more about Richardson right now because of what he can do with his legs, but just from a totality standpoint, until I see more of Richardson, I think I would have Russell Wilson ahead of Richardson.
Okay. I'm going to go the other way. I'll put Richardson ahead of Wilson by a little bit and kind of bank on the upside and the potential, or what he showed last year before the injury is enough to give me the slight edge to Richardson over Wilson.
Okay.
All right. Trevor Lawrence, my namesake.
I would have Lawrence ranked ahead of Russell Wilson.
Okay. Me as well. And then Will Levis down there in Tennessee.
Yeah. What did we really learn about him, though, overall?
He was impressive in that game against Pittsburgh. I give him credit for the moxie.
Yeah. From an experience standpoint, from right now until I see more of Will Levis, I think I would rate Russell Wilson ahead of Will Levis.
I agree. I'll put Wilson ahead of Levis. AFC West, Bo Nix, the rookie Pittsburgh will see in week number 2.
It's hard for me to put a rookie ahead of Russell Wilson just yet. Now, Bo Nix did some exciting things from what little bit I saw in the preseason and all like that, but he's still got to feel his way out here. So I'd put Russell Wilson ahead of Bo Nix.
I agree with you. Patrick Mahomes, take all the time you need to answer this question.
That would be a yes. He's ahead.
All right, same here. Gardner Minshew in Las Vegas, your neck of the woods.
Man, Minshew's more of that journeyman. You got to have the right offense and the right personnel. I would put Russell Wilson ahead of Minshew, I think.
Me too. It depends on some systems. Minshew's a good RPO quarterback, RPO system, but I'll put Wilson ahead of Minshew, and then Justin Herbert with the Chargers.
Yeah, the big thing, obviously, with Herbert is his health. But when he's healthy, he's a good quarterback. I would put him ahead of Russell Wilson.
All right, let's go over to the NFC now. NFC East, Dak Prescott.
He's ahead of Russ.
Same. Daniel Jones with the Giants. All right.
Oh, you got to feel for that guy. Giants are in a tough situation. I think if they had their druthers, they would have. And I think the Hard Knocks even showed they would have traded up for another quarterback if they could have got one. I'd put Russell Wilson ahead of Daniel Jones. I don't know where you stand on that.
No, I would as well. I think they're regretting that contract, and we all kind of sensed that the second they signed Jones long term. Jalen Hurts in Philadelphia.
Oh, yeah, he's ahead of Russell Wilson.
Agreed. And then Jaden Daniels in Washington.
I mean, I got to see it first. I mean, obviously, he was a spectacular college quarterback, but he's going to have his growing pains and all like that. I'd put Russell Wilson ahead of Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, I'm debating on this one. Daniels looked good in the preseason, but it is preseason action. I'll put Russ ahead, but that one is subject to change. Let's go NFC North. Caleb Williams. What about the number 1 pick of the draft?
Yeah, once again, dealing with a rookie here, and I have to give Russ the nod here over Caleb Williams, at least initially.
I'll make an exception here, just given Williams' talent. I thought he had a spectacular preseason. I'll put Caleb Williams ahead of Russell Wilson.
Okay. Well, you're putting more ahead than I am, and I had Russ at 22 and you had him at 20. So I imagine you're keeping score here, right?
If I'm keeping score correctly, and I may not be, I think we're tied right now, actually, in terms of where we're ranking here. Jared Goff in Detroit.
Yeah, I'd have him ahead of Russell Wilson.
Me too. Jordan Love in Green Bay.
Yes, I'd have him ahead of Russell Wilson.
Agreed. And Sam Darnold in Minnesota. This one, a little interesting.
I think I'd put Russell Wilson ahead of Darnold. Darnold makes too many just weird mistakes with the football.
I still like Darnold, but yeah, I'd go with Russ ahead of Darnold as well. All right, NFC South, Kirk Cousins, the man Pittsburgh will see week 1.
Yeah, I'd put him ahead of Russell Wilson.
Same, Bryce Young in Carolina, trying to rebound here too.
No, I would not put him ahead of Russell Wilson.
Agreed. Derek Carr with the Saints. This one might be close.
Yeah, that's kind of it feels like that's a push. Can I tie?
No push. No pushes. I'm going to say no. I'm going to to clarify, I'll put Russ ahead of Derek Carr. I think Carr could be a little more erratic.
Yeah, I'm with you.
And then Baker Mayfield in Tampa Bay.
Boy, he looked good late last season with Tampa Bay. I'd have to put Baker ahead of Russell Wilson right now.
Same, got that extension, and I think it was well-deserved. All right, last division, NFC West, Kyler Murray in Arizona.
Guy's amazing with his feet. What he does, his decisions he makes with a football makes me kind of question. I would put Russell Wilson ahead of Kyler Murray.
This one's really tough for me. I'm going to give the edge to Murray. He can be more dynamic with his legs, but this one to me is pretty close. All right, Matthew Stafford in the Rams.
Yeah, I'd put him ahead of Russell Wilson.
Same, Brock Purdy in San Francisco. Yes. Same, and last but not least, Geno Smith in Seattle.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting there. But, man, when Geno's healthy and Geno's on, man, he still throws a good ball and all. I'd have to put Geno ahead of Russell Wilson, to be honest with you.
Yeah, this one's really close for me. I'm going to give I know 2 years ago Smith was spectacular. Last year was down a bit. I'm going to give the slight edge to Russ over Geno.
All right, so where does that put me with Russell Wilson on that? How many quarterbacks do I have ranked ahead of Russell Wilson?
I'm hoping I tallied this correctly. I'm not the most reliable tallier in the world, but if I am right here, we tied, so we both have Wilson in the same place. It is 21st overall, so it's the middle ground of where we had our initial picks. Me at 20, you at 22, both at 21.
All right. That seems
reasonable.
That sounds reasonable. Yeah.
So I forget who put ahead of who. We had some differences in terms of where we ranked the other quarterbacks, but
I think you had one or two rookies where I didn't.
Yeah, I put Caleb Williams was the one rookie ahead. You put Geno ahead of Russ. Mm-hmm. Okay. I think there were a couple other differences, but anyway, I just wanted to kind of gauge where things were at entering the season, and hopefully Wilson can climb those charts a little bit to get to, 15, 16 for Pittsburgh to have a successful season.
Boy, if we're talking about Russell Wilson after the first 4 games of this season being like the 15th best quarterback in the NFL, I think that's going to be a good problem to I think that's a good ranking to hang your hat on, meaning they probably scored some points. He's not turning the football over, and they probably have won some games through the first 4 games.
Yeah, I'm with you. All right, Dave, anything else to discuss today before we start closing out today's show?
All right, that was a fun little exercise. Interested where the listeners might have Russell Wilson at.
Yeah, send in your email. And if you're playing the home game of our contest here, let us know where you put Russell Wilson in terms of starting quarterbacks.
All right. Do we have anything else we need to discuss today?
Nope, I think that's it. We can close out with some reader emails and end today's show.
All right, let's one from Ron Reagan here. Alex, I delighted in reading your recent terrible take on the wide receiver saga number 1275. Listening and reading Dave's and your speculation and analysis on this subject has been like an entertaining book. You take to the beach just to pass time while basking in the hazy days of summer. I never really expected much more to come from the Ayuk machinations, but it did make background noise better than squatting seagulls, he says. I agree that deft maneuvering, boy, he used some big words in here. Deft maneuvering of the existing wide receiver talent, and we now have the roster allowing the RPO, Freiermuth, and Pickens to create opportunities for the bevy of wide receiver 2 options is the best game plan, at least until the approach fails to produce the desired results. Perhaps having 3 to 4 wide receiver 2 options to trot on the field could befuddle a few cornerbacks or DBs. Thanks to all the Steelers Depot team. You gave me better insight into the team's system structure, strengths, and weaknesses. I am more ready for the regular season than I have ever been. Ronald Reagan, South Pasadena, Florida. I did not know there is a South Pasadena, Florida.
All right. Thank you for the email. Appreciate you listening. Not sure what the biggest takeaway kind of there was, but we'll see what they can do with the receivers. Like I said, Arthur Smith, I think his stamp will be important for this offense.
It looks like that's way south. It looks like that South Pasadena is southwest of Tampa. So I lived in Florida all those years, and I never even heard of that place. So thanks for the email, Ron. Richard Jameson, quarterback record. If Russell Wilson throws for 3,000 yards this season, he will join Peyton Manning as the only 2 quarterbacks in NFL history to throw for 3,000 yards in each of his first 13 seasons. Will he do it? I think our own Ross McCorkle had an interesting kind of career stat line, milestones that Russell Wilson can reach this season. And I believe that was one of them. Will Russell Wilson throw for 3,000 yards this season?
I think he will. If he starts, I think he's going to start most of the season, 16, 17 games. It's kind of hard to not get to that point. I know Pittsburgh has struggled to get to that point recently, but I'll say yes, Wilson does.
I'll be an optimist, and I say he will as well, too.
All right, Dave, any other emails? You want to close out today's show?
Let's see if I got anything more here. I think I got most of them here. Oh, right. I got, he said, this is from Daniel J. McKelvey. First, I wanted to share some good news for our family. My wife and I welcomed the world's newest Steelers fan 2 weeks ago, just in time for the season. Can't wait to get her hooked on the podcast. And I'm quietly hoping that her first phrase is, however, comma. Apologies if you already answered this. I had sent towards the end of the training camp, blah, 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 junk mail. 2 things. First, what is the proper pronunciation of Latrobe? I've always pronounced it Latrobe, he says, but I hear people at the depot go in and out of that and Latrobe, and now I'm confused. Look, we have fun with that because the people in Latrobe or Latrobe say Latrobe, don't they? Most of them?
I'm not 100% sure, to be honest. I say Latrobe. I just go Latrobe.
I was born and raised up until just hearing, I think, some beat writers talk about it. I always called it Latrobe. All right. I think some beat writers have had some fun with that over the years, saying that maybe some of the locals call it Latrobe. So I don't know what the official, I've always called it Latrobe, and you've spent the most time up there. I think you call it Latrobe, right?
Yeah, I always say Latrobe. I don't know if we're doing a whole Louisville part 2 here in terms of pronunciation, but I've always gone Latrobe.
He says your recent review of LeBeau's Legendary got me excited to read the book, but I know you've talked about the other books on the podcast, Alex. I think you plugged John Eisenberg's League once, and I put on my Amazon wish list. He said it would be a great recommendation, having a reading list is what he's basically wanting from us for recommendations of books that we would suggest listeners read and all like that. Maybe that's something that we can dedicate an off-season post to this next time around, Alex, our reading list.
Sure, we can do that. You reading anything right now?
No, just going back and reading some things in what's on my desk here, Crunching the Numbers, which is more salary cap related stuff. Just making sure I've not missed anything from Jason Fitzgerald, who runs Over the Cap and all like that. I pulled that back out to go through some things on that. So crunching numbers is if you're into cap and contracts and all like that. put that on your reading list. What are you reading right now?
Nothing sports related, non-sports stuff. So probably not too interesting for the football crowd.
All right, Dan from Chicago, we appreciate that email there. So I think with that, we got it. So in the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter/X at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. Send us where you have Russell Wilson at in the top starting 32 quarterbacks that we read off right now. Where would you have Russell Wilson ranked? You can do that, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. Also send your other questions for the show that way. Let's see. If you want to donate to the show, SteelersDepot.com, hit the donate button. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com, hit the ad-free button. Follow the directions that way. Until Wednesday, and obviously we're going to be getting into hopefully a opposing beat writer here to preview the Falcons in either Wednesday or Thursday show. We'll obviously have our season predictions for the Steelers and everything related that we do ahead of the season in the next coming 2 shows. So in the meantime, let's see. As always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.